After midnight, a family doctor makes a choice she knows Alabama can treat as a felony. A 13-year-old girl is in front of her, pregnant, terrified, without her mother, and begging for help. The girl is still holding back the one truth that would explain how she got here. That is where Judge Stone opens. Bria helps her anyway, and the decision will not stay private for long. It starts the chain that drags half the county into court. The case lands before Mary Stone, a local circuit judge in a small Alabama community where she knows the courthouse people, the church people, the sheriff, and many of the witnesses. In a place like that, every ruling is going to look personal to someone. Very quickly, the charge stops being the only question. A child is in danger. One adult breaks the law to help her. Other people step forward to defend the law, the church, the town's image, or their own power. The book keeps asking the hardest question in the room. Who is actually protecting the girl? Episode 1, From the Midnight Procedure to a Town Under Siege. Family Dr. Bria Gaines is still at the clinic after midnight when the school nurse brings in Nova, a frightened 13-year-old who should never be there alone. No mother, no permission, no safe legal cover for anyone in the room. Bria asks Nova's age twice. 13 changes everything. Alabama law is already running through her head. So is her duty to report. So is the abortion statute. If she goes forward, the state can treat this as a Class A felony unless she can later show that she acted to prevent a serious health risk. The school nurse is scared enough to push hard. She tells Bria that Nova is desperate. If Bria sends her away, Nova may hurt herself or try something crude at home. Nova barely speaks at first. Then she looks at Bria and asks for help. Bria sees the choice clearly. She can call authorities, bring in Nova's mother, and start the official process. That also means the pregnancy keeps going while adults take control of it. Or she can help now and take the felony risk onto herself. She chooses to do it. During the procedure, Bria hears fragments from Nova that stay with her. They do not sit cleanly with the later story about a party and an unknown boy. Bria cannot prove anything from that room. She leaves with suspicion, nothing more. One fact is clear from the start. Bria performs the abortion in a locked clinic after midnight, and she later admits that she did it. The whole case begins with that deliberate act. Mary at the farm, then in court. Judge Mary Stone is Bullock County's elected circuit judge, a black woman who also works her family farm. Before court, Mary is outside in boots with feed buckets, checking cattle, then the mayor, then the rest of the place. The story puts her on the land first for a reason. Her authority is local. People know her truck, her sisters, and her road. That rooted life gives Mary standing. It also gives other people something to use against her later. On the bench, Mary is sentencing Farrell Gray. The defendant has already sent her a threat letter. In court, he keeps going, with menace, Bible talk, and racist abuse. He wants her rattled. He wants her off the case. Mary never gives him that. When the sentence comes, she refuses to let his threats steer her. She also refuses to hand him the death penalty. She gives him life without parole. That early scene tells you how Mary works. Pressure does not move her off the law. Heat does not make her showier. She stays put and rules. Chelt. Saturday breakfast opens Mary's world. Before Bria's case reaches Mary's courtroom, the farm fills up for Saturday breakfast. This is part meal, part relief station, part habit. In a poor county, people survive through routines like this. Mary and her sisters are cooking, carrying pans, refilling plates, and taking children off tired arms so parents can eat. 4. Nova comes with Nova's mother and the younger kids. Mary ends up holding the baby on one hip while she keeps the line moving. Nova's eyes drift to the trees and flowers around the yard. She notices bark, color, shape. Mary sees that pause. Then Nova's mother snaps at her. Watch the little ones. Move. Help. The order inside that home is easy to read. Nova does not get much room to stay a child. Then a TV crew rolls up the drive, tipped off by Mary's outspoken sister. Cameras turn breakfast into footage. Mary keeps serving, yet she can feel the shift. A private act of care has moved into public view. Later, scenes like this will be used to argue that she is too close to the people in Brias's case. For now, it is still breakfast, and the camera is already changing it. Nova's errand ends at the ER. After the procedure, Nova goes back to the life waiting for her. There is no quiet recovery. There are chores. She is already cramping and bleeding when Nova's mother sends her to the store with her baby brother. Nova goes because saying no would start another fight. The walk turns ugly fast. The bag digs into her hand. The baby gets heavier. Blood keeps slipping down her legs. By the time she reaches home, she can barely stand. She crawls the last stretch. Her first answer from home is anger and disbelief. A neighbor sees her condition and forces the moment forward. The ambulance comes, the ER does the rest. At the hospital, doctors find pain, blood loss, infection, and a recent abortion. That chart becomes a usable medical record. Once it exists, the law has a trail to follow. Bria will never deny the procedure itself. From the state's side, that makes the felony charge look simple. A doctor performed an abortion on a 13-year-old. The real legal fight moves to one point, whether Bria can fit inside the statute's health risk exception. Handcuffs in the waiting room. The sheriff does not come for Bria quietly. He comes to the clinic while patients are still there. Bria sees deputies at the door and knows what is happening. Why? The handcuffs go on in front of the waiting room. The warning is red. Her staff has to watch. So do people who came in for care. Some stare, some look scared for Bria. Some look scared for themselves. In a place like Union Springs, losing one family doctor hits more than one defendant. Outside, cameras are already stacking up. Inside, Bria is walked past the people who depend on her. The arrest turns a hidden medical act into public shame in one afternoon. No one is fighting over whether the procedure happened. The fight ahead is over why she did it, and whether the law leaves any room for that decision. A sewage case shows how Mary judges. Around the same time, Mary is hearing a miserable little case about raw sewage. A poor man is facing charges over waste backing up on his property. The DA tries to frame it as a clean violation. Mary keeps asking the questions he wants to skip. Who failed to fix the system? Who can afford a septic replacement? Who gets blamed when the county leaves people in a mess and then calls that mess criminal? The room gets very quiet once those answers start landing. Mary strips the case down and throws it out. That ruling shows how she reads power. It also reminds the DA that she will overrule him in open court when she thinks he is prosecuting the wrong person. By then, Mary also knows Bria's abortion case is coming her way. The pressure starts almost at once. Threats start climbing around Mary. At the early Bria hearings, the DA tries to tighten the screws. He pushes the case as a straight felony and treats bond like a moral test. Mary keeps control of the room and refuses to turn pretrial process into punishment. Then the pressure follows her home. Mary's private phone starts ringing at night. Some callers whisper, some quote scripture, some use open racial abuse. She has not heard the case on the merits yet, and strangers are already telling her what kind of woman she must be. Her family sees danger fast. Mary's outspoken sister says this case can wreck her life. The pastor comes in from another angle and tries to define the case for her before the law does. The DA starts talking recusal. The breakfast, the town ties, the people she knows, all of it gets hauled out as ammunition. Then the mayor gives her a harder warning. The attorney general's office is joining the prosecution. Soon after that, the governor and the attorney general get on the phone and push her to step aside and move the case. The words sound polite, the message is plain. Give it up. Mary refuses. Ben takes over the defense. Bria feels the case swallowing the rest of her life. Patients disappear. Staff gets jumpy. Every routine errand now carries whispers or a camera. That is when Ben Myers shows up. Ben is an Atlanta defense lawyer, polished and direct, and he already knows this case has outgrown local handling. He comes to Bria's house first. She does not trust him. A big city trial lawyer arriving at her door can look like one more person trying to use her trouble. Ben comes back to the office with something more useful than confidence. He has a plan. He says the state will present the case as simple, so the defense needs an answer that is just as clear. He wants to build around the health risk exception and around what Nova's age, fear, and pregnancy meant that night. Bria's first lawyer sees the same storm. He tells her to let Ben take the case. That handoff matters. It is a local lawyer admitting the fight has grown bigger than he can carry. One earlier choice already sits in the file. Bria's first lawyer waived the preliminary hearing. At the time, that looks small. In practice, it means the case has no early sworn version from the key witnesses on paper. Once Ben is in, the defense finally has shape. He is there to defend Bria's decision under the statute, not to deny the procedure. The official story gets rehearsed. At the courthouse, the Assistant Attorney General starts walking Nova through the version already in the file. A party, alcohol, marijuana, then an unknown boy. Nova sits with that story in front of her and one question on her mind. She asks whether Bria will be okay. Ben goes to the apartment to hear it for himself. Nova's mother gives it first. Party, drinking, weed, blackout, unknown boy. She tells it like she has said it more than once. Then Nova gives Ben the same account. The words match. The room does not help it. The apartment is crowded. The younger children are everywhere. Nova's mother stays close. Ben leaves with no proof that the story is false. He also leaves thinking Nova has almost no safe room to contradict an adult. Bria adds one more piece. She tells Ben about the things Nova blurted out during the procedure, details that never sat right with the party story. That still gives them suspicion, nothing more. Publicly, the party story remains the official version. The school nurse flips. Then the story turns darker. Ben brings Bria another blow. The school nurse has been exposed on mandated reporting grounds. The state offers deferred prosecution if she cooperates. This is the same school nurse who brought Nova to the clinic. She could describe the panic in that room, the absent mother, the fear of self-harm, and the choice Bria had to make under pressure. Her testimony could complicate the case for both sides. Then the ground moves again. By then, the school nurse has agreed to help the state. Before anybody sees what that cooperation would look like in court, she drives home after a late shift and notices a truck sitting in her mirror too long. It follows her turns. The fear becomes physical before she reaches the house. The next time Mary sees her, the same school nurse is back in the story now as the murder victim. She is hanging behind her house, hands tied behind her back, with a red K painted on the tree. Mary does not need a speech to read that scene, neither does anyone else standing there. Her death removes an unstable witness and raises the fear level for everyone around the case. It also exposes the cost of that earlier waived hearing. There is no sworn preliminary testimony sitting in the file to replace her. The square turns hostile. After that killing, the courthouse square stops feeling like ordinary civic ground. Anti-abortion signs crowd the sidewalks. Confederate flags show up with them. The rally organizer and his people keep pushing the temperature higher. Counter-protesters arrive. So do outside activists and more cameras. Mary looks out and sees the case turning into a symbol fight far bigger than one county file. Then armed men appear in formation. Their faces are covered. Rifles are out. People in the square start saying the group is Patriot Front. Panic spreads faster than orders. People run. People shout. Gunfire cracks through the air. The sheriff looks stretched to the limit because he is. Mary can feel the town losing control of its own streets. Ben gets his own proof that the danger is no longer tied to the crowd alone. Outside a barbecue place, he gets jumped. The message is simple. Even the defense lawyer is moving through town without safe ground. Pressure reaches Mary's land and past. While the square gets hotter, the attack on Mary gets more technical. A lawyer's letter lands on her table about the farm. The land is heirs' property. Too many earlier generations died without clean wills. That leaves cracks in title. A small share can be bought, then used to threaten sale or a punishing buyout. Mary understands right away that this is an attack on home through paperwork. The witness pressure gets its own hearing. Ben shows that Nova and Nova's mother have been receiving food, clothes, rent help, and donations through the pastor's church. Mary does not pretend that means nothing. Nova's, Tratstyre Flevin, Chaxters. She also does not strike the witnesses. She lets them testify and lets the defense use the support on cross. The strain is cutting deeper than procedure. With an old friend, Mary finally says out loud what the case keeps stirring up. She was raped at 15. Years later, she had an abortion. That stays private at this point. It is truth under her skin, not public evidence. The pastor later corners her and shows that he remembers the confession she once trusted him with. He tries to press that memory into the case. Around the same time, breakfast footage starts moving online and through tabloids. Strangers clip it, spin it, and turn Mary's farm into one more argument for recusal. Mary forces the case toward trial. By now, Mary can see the pattern. A witness has been squeezed, then killed. The streets around the courthouse are unstable. Ben has been assaulted. Her land is under attack. Her phone keeps ringing. Politicians still want the case moved. Delay stops looking safe. Delay starts looking like more time for fear, rumor, and pressure to harden. Mary responds with the one tool she still controls. She forces the case toward trial sooner. Ben gets ready from the defense side. The assistant attorney general tightens witness prep. Bria braces for a courtroom that already feels hostile. Nova is still trapped between the official story and the truth she cannot yet safely say out loud. That is where episode 1 needs to leave us. The illegal procedure is public. The state has its simple felony theory. The defense has its answer. Mary stands as both the judge on the case and one of its targets. Union Springs is shaking under media heat. Church pressure, racial intimidation, land pressure, witness pressure, and state-level meddling. Yes. The real break in the story can only happen once the jury is seated. Up to this point, the town has mostly been fighting over what it wants the case to mean. In the next episode, the courtroom will force the hidden facts into the open. Episode 2, The Trial, the Acquittal, and the Price Afterward. Mary is the judge who kept the case and now has to carry it through trial under open pressure. By the time jury selection starts, she can already see the first problem. It is the county itself. When the clerk calls names, people look toward Bria before they even stand. Some nod, some stare too long, some will not look at her at all. This is a small place. Bria treated people in that room, or their children, or their parents. Others know Nova's family. Others know the pastor. Almost everybody knows the protests outside. Mary starts with the simple questions. Do you know the defendant? Do you know Nova? Do you know Nova's mother? Do you know anyone who has already formed an opinion? Hands keep rising. After a while, the harder question seems to be, who in the room does not know somebody tied to the case? Then the second problem shows up. Some people want off the jury so badly they can barely hide it. They talk about work, children, money, nerves. Others lean the other way. They sound eager. Mary hears it in the heat of their answers. Some arrive ready to punish. Some arrive ready to save. Either kind can wreck a trial. So she keeps narrowing the field. Who has read the coverage? Nearly all of them. Who has seen the marches? Nearly all of them. Who has already talked about the case at church, at work, at supper, at the gas station? More hands. By noon, Mary knows an ordinary county jury will not do. There is no clean anonymity left. There is only control. She orders sequestration. In a county this small, that lands hard. Jurors now know the trial will take over their days and nights. More people ask to be excused. A few faces go stiff. One man says flatly that he does not want to spend nights in a motel over a doctor who broke the law. Another says Bria once treated his wife and he cannot pretend that means nothing. Mary lets some go. She keeps some. She watches who answers too fast and who takes time. She also reaches for the small routines she trusts. Candy baskets appear where jurors and witnesses can reach them. Peppermints, butterscotch. It looks almost quaint. Mary knows better. Tense people need something to do with their hands. A juror unwrapping candy is still sitting still. A witness taking a mint is still in the room. One shadow hangs over the whole panel before testimony even starts. The church had been helping Nova's household with food, clothes, and rent. Mary already ruled that the jury would hear that. So every juror comes in with two possible readings at once. The help could sound like mercy. It could also sound like pressure. That will shape how they hear Nova and Nova's mother when they finally take the stand. Tribeitage. By the end of selection, the panel in front of her is no one's ideal. It is the best Mary can build from a county that walked in split down the middle. Now she has to keep that split from tearing the trial apart. Bria tries church and gets turned out. Bria is the family doctor on trial, already worn down by months of public blame before the jury even hears evidence. On the Sunday before testimony, she goes to church. She is not expecting comfort from everybody in the room. She just wants 1 hour that feels familiar. A pew, a hymn, a place where she can sit still before court begins. She does not get it. The pastor starts with scripture, then lets the sermon slide toward judgment. He talks about innocent blood. He talks about people who place themselves above God. He talks about a town that invites punishment when it calls evil mercy. He never says Bria's name. He does not need to. Bria sits through the first part with her back straight and her eyes forward. Then she feels the room change around her. Heads tilt. A woman pulls a child closer. Someone mutters loud enough to carry. When the service ends, the pastor's wife comes down the aisle and tells Bria she should leave. Bria does not argue. She stands, steps out of the pew, and walks the long aisle while people who used to thank her for care look at her as if she carries a stain. By the time she reaches the parking lot, one truth is settled. She will enter trial already pushed out of the town's biggest spiritual room. The state opens a simple case and the room turns dangerous. Back in court, Mary settles in at the bench and watches the room. The DA opens by trying to strip the case down to one blunt point. An abortion happened. Bria knew the law. Bria did it anyway. He wants the jury looking at one admitted act and nothing around it. Ben is the outside defense lawyer who took over Brias's case and is now finally in front of the jury. He answers in a calmer voice, yes, the procedure happened. The fight is over why it happened, what Bria believed about the danger to Nova, and whether the state is ignoring the exception written into the statute. He does not promise more than he can prove. He keeps the jury on a terrified 13-year-old, a desperate medical decision, and a law that still asks about serious health risk. Then the witnesses begin. The emergency room proof helps the state because it is concrete. Infection, bleeding, pain, tissue, charts. The DA leans on every ugly detail. One juror stops writing for a moment. Another shifts hard in the seat. The point is plain. This is what the state wants them to picture when they hear the words illegal abortion. Mary lets the evidence in because it belongs there. At the same time, she keeps reading the room. The gallery is packed too tight. The air feels charged. Bailiffs are moving more than she likes. One spectator whispers after almost every answer. Another keeps throwing a look at Bria whenever the jury turns away. Mary keeps doing the quiet work of control. She has water brought closer to the stand. She has the clerk lower her voice for the younger witnesses. The candy baskets stay where people can reach them. Small things matter in a room like this. Then the danger turns physical. The sound hits first, a crack, then exploding glass. For a beat, nobody understands what happened. Then people duck. A juror cries out. Bailiffs lunge toward the window. A brick skids across the floor near counsel table. Mary does not shout. She slams the gavel once and sends the jury out. Secure the room, clear the gallery, check the halls. She stays still on the bench because the whole room is watching her face. When court resumes, the broken window has been boarded over. The room keeps going. It does not feel whole again. Bria finds the threat inside the courthouse. For Bria, the worst part is how little relief there is once she steps outside the courtroom itself. Cameras wait in the hall. Somebody hisses baby killer as she passes. Another woman says she should already be in prison. Ben stays close, but the building is crowded and the hostility keeps leaking through every gap. Bria slips into the restroom for half a minute alone. She braces both hands on the sink and tries to get her breathing back under control. A stall door bangs. A woman moves behind her fast. Bria turns too late. The grab is quick and mean. Fingers clamp around her wrist. Something wet and red drags across the inside of her skin. By the time Bria jerks free, there is a bright K on her arm. It is not deep. It is not bloody. It is worse than that. It is a message. We can touch you anywhere. She comes out of the restroom white-faced and furious. A deputy takes notes. Ben is shaking with anger. Word reaches Mary before the next witness takes the stand. Now the brick through the window has company. The courthouse itself is no longer secure. The threat is inside the building. Nova breaks the party story on the stand. Mary is back at the bench when Nova is called. Until this moment, the public version is still the party story. A party, alcohol, marijuana, a blackout, an unknown boy. Ugly, vague, and useful to anyone who wants the case kept simple. The Assistant Attorney General handles Nova carefully at first. Mary watches the tone as much as the words. It is soft, practiced, reassuring. It sounds like a path the witness has walked before. Nova looks smaller in the chair than anyone in the room wants to admit. Her shoulders stay tight. Nova's mother is there. Bria is there. The jury is there. So is the pressure of every story told around her before she ever opens her mouth. The first questions are easy. Name, age, school. Then the state starts leading her toward the night it wants. Was there a party? Nova hesitates. Were people drinking? A longer pause. Did you smoke marijuana? The Assistant Attorney General repeats the question in a softer voice, as if the right tone might pull Nova back onto the old track. Mary sees Nova's hands twist together. She sees jurors lean forward. She sees the state still expecting fear to hold the story in place. Then Nova says no. At first, it sounds small. Maybe she is correcting one detail. The state tries again. Wasn't there a party outside town? Didn't you tell officers that? No, Nova says again, stronger now. There was no party. The whole room shifts. The Assistant Attorney General stops. The DA half rises. Ben stays very still, and Mary reads that stillness as a sign he expected a break somewhere, even if he did not know the exact shape of it. The jurors are looking from Nova to the prosecution table now, trying to understand which ground just gave way. The state asks, who got her pregnant? Nova's eyes fill. She does not go back. She says 2 boys did, 2 white boys. They forced her. They threatened her brothers and sisters if she told. One of them showed her a K on his arm so she would believe the threat. The official story does not weaken. It breaks open in the middle of court. The courtroom splits open and the trial keeps moving. From Nava's side, telling the truth does not feel grand. It feels dangerous. She can see Nava's mother in the room. She can hear the prosecutor trying to slow the answers down. She knows every adult there wants a version they can hold on to. Her mouth is dry. Her stomach hurts. She remembers being told what story to give before. She remembers the threat against the children at home. She remembers how silence seems safer. But she also sees Bria at the defense table. Bria helped her when nobody else did. Nova cannot stand under oath and leave the lie there, so she says it in pieces. No party. No unknown boy. 2 boys. They held her down, they raped her, they told her what would happen if she talked. Someone later told her to tell the other story. Then she looks toward the gallery and sees one of them. She points. Everything breaks at once. Mary sends the jury out before panic can spread farther. She orders deputies to hold the boy Nova identified. She tells the sheriff to lock down the exits and find the second one fast. In the next few minutes, the courtroom turns into 2 cases at once. Deputies start chasing a rape investigation through the building and out into the county. Bria's abortion trial still has to keep moving on its own track. When court resumes after recess, Mary makes sure Nova has water, space, and quiet. The candy basket is moved within reach of the stand. Nova keeps going. She says getting sick after the procedure was not Bria's fault. She says Bria helped her. She says she needed the pregnancy to end. That changes the meaning of the whole trial. It does not answer the legal question by itself. Mary keeps that line clear in her own head. Nova has shattered the story the state brought into court. The jury has now heard the deeper violence behind the pregnancy. Even so, Bria still admitted the abortion. The charge remains. The statute still asks whether the health risk exception covers what Bria did. Outside the courtroom, deputies are taking statements and moving fast on Nova's accusation. Inside the courtroom, the abortion case continues under the same rule it had an hour earlier. Bria says why she did it. When Bria takes the stand, she does not dodge the act itself. Yes, she performed the abortion. Yes, she knew the law. Then she gives the reason in her own words. But she believed Nova faced a serious health risk. She is talking about a 13-year-old girl, already pregnant, terrified, unsupported, and speaking like a child who might hurt herself before she carried that pregnancy any further. That is the judgment Bria made in real time. The Assistant Attorney General comes hard on Cross. Why did you not report first? Why did you not call law enforcement? Why did you not contact Nova's mother? Why did you decide you could act on your own? Bria answers plainly. Reporting first would have started a process. It would have put Nova into a system that moves by paperwork, interviews, and delay. In Bria's judgment, the pregnancy would have kept advancing while adults argued. She believed the danger was already present and already severe. Mary watches the jurors through that testimony. Some recoil from the admission itself. Some look shaken by what Nova revealed. A few seem to understand, maybe for the first time, that Bria is not claiming she never did it. Her defense stands on the exception in the law and the danger she says she saw. Pressure follows Mary off the bench. The pressure on Mary no longer stays inside the courtroom. One evening, as she reaches her car, the pastor steps into her path. He is the same pastor who drove Bria out of church. Now he comes after Mary in a quieter way. He tells her she should step aside for the good of the court. Then he reaches for something he should never use. He reminds her of the abortion she once confessed to him in private. The blow lands because the memory is real. Mary had only recently spoken aloud to one trusted friend that she was raped at 15 and later had an abortion in her 20s. Very few people know that history. Hearing it turned into leverage makes her feel the betrayal before she feels the anger. Then the next push arrives in chambers. The Assistant Attorney General asks for a private word. Her manner is polished. Her file is neat. When she slides a paper across the desk, Mary knows at once the line has been crossed again. It is the old abortion record, dug up, carried into her chambers, offered as a reason to recuse in the name of preserving the case. Mary looks at the paper, then at the woman who brought it. She reads strain there, too. This move feels bigger than one lawyer's impulse. It feels like pressure coming downhill through an assigned messenger. Mary says no. She will not step off because the pastor broke confidence. She will not step off because the state found an old record and tried to turn it into blackmail. She will not hand the case away because other people think a woman's private history gives them a claim on her public duty. Security tightens after that. The threat chatter is serious enough that the governor's people send a National Guard escort. The warning is blunt. There is talk out there. There are names in circulation. The road back to the farm is part of the risk now. In the middle of all that, Mary gets one brief image pulling the other way. Back at the farm, her mare foals. A wet, shaky colt struggles up in the straw under lamplight. For a few minutes, Mary is simply a farmer watching new life fight onto its legs. Then, court calls again. The jury deadlocks, then convicts. Closing arguments draw the line as sharply as either side can draw it. The DA tells the jury the conception story changes nothing in the statute. Bria performed an illegal abortion. That, he says, is the case. Ben tells them the state spent the whole trial pretending it understood Nova when it never did. It missed the real crime, it pushed a false public story, it used the medical aftermath as a club while ignoring the danger Bria saw in front of her. Then, he brings the jury back to the legal center, the health risk exception. He says the state's own proof showed Nova's age, fear, condition, and crisis. The jury goes out. Hours pass. Then the note comes, deadlocked. Mary reads it twice. She knew this was possible from the first day of selection. Even so, the note lands heavy. She brings the jurors back in and gives the Allen charge. Keep working, listen to one another, reconsider. Do not give up just because it is hard. She sends them out again. When they come back the next time, the verdict is guilty. The room makes one low sound together. Bria goes still. Ben's jaw tightens. The jury also recommends the minimum sentence, 10 years. Mary hears that too. They convicted, but they did not give the state the full punishment it wanted. The DA is on his feet quickly, asking that Bria be taken into custody. Mary waits until the guilty verdict is fully returned and on the record. Then she acts. Mary uses Rule 20.3 and frees Bria. Mary turns to Rule 20.3. In open court, after the jury has already convicted, she sets the verdict aside and enters a judgment of acquittal. She is using the authority the law gives her when she decides the evidence cannot support leaving that conviction in place. The DA objects at once. Ben looks stunned for half a beat, then ready. Well, Bria looks as if the floor shifted under her a second time in one day. Mary keeps her voice even as she reads the order. Judgment of acquittal entered. Bria is released. She knows, even while she says the words, that the price will come back toward her. She does not know from which direction first. She knows it is coming. The guard takes Mary home to the tripwire. The warning about threat chatter stays in place after court. Mary does not drive home alone. The guard escort takes her out through a county that feels watchful, even in the dark. At the farm, she wants only the porch, the kitchen, the ordinary sounds of animals settling down. Then the headlights catch the front of the house. A red K is painted there. Lower down, almost lost in the dark, she sees a line stretched where no line should be, a tripwire. Mary understands the trap in one sick flash. She is still too far away to stop what comes next. The rooster moves first. It hits the wire before she does. The explosion tears the night open. The blast rips through the farmhouse. Fire runs through wood that held her rooms, her papers, her kitchen, her family shape of home. The rooster dies there. Mary is thrown back, hurt, smoke-stung, and alive because something smaller reached the wire before she did. At the hospital, the shock hits harder than the cuts and bruises. Someone tried to kill her on her own land after she used the bench the way the law allowed. That fact sits in the room with her. Her sisters carry much of the practical burden after that. There is no farmhouse to go back into, so trailer life begins on the same property. The barn still stands, the cattle still need feed. The mare and her colt are still there. Mary's house is gone. Mary stays. For a stretch, she thinks the bombing may have finished her judgeship even though it missed her body. Pansies, election night, and the charge that finally lands. The first quiet turn comes when Nova visits the trailer. She brings pansies in her hands. No speech, no courtroom voice. Just flowers. She asks how Mary is. Then she asks the question that still matters to her most. Is Bria coming back? Mary cannot give her much comfort. Bria is free, and Bria is leaving. Freedom did not restore the clinic, the town, or the life Bria had before the arrest. Nova is safer in one real sense. The two boys she named have been identified. They later confess. They are being held while the system decides whether to try them as adults. Even so, Nova is still carrying what happened. The pansies make that plain. She is a child who had to become public evidence and then go back to living. Election night brings the next shock. Mary expects to lose. After the acquittal and the bombing, defeat feels easy to imagine. Her sisters refuse to let her hide in the trailer. They get her to the watch party. Then the numbers start breaking the other way. Turnout is high. The margin grows. Mary wins re-election. That does not rebuild the House. It does answer one question. The voters do not remove her for what she did from the bench. The last public scene returns to court under a different case caption. The charged rally organizer is arraigned for the murder of the school nurse. At last, one piece of the terror campaign has entered formal prosecution. Mary recuses right away. She saw the school nurse's body with her own eyes. She knows she cannot sit as a neutral judge over that case. Before she steps away, she throws one last question toward him anyway. The question the book does not resolve in court before it ends. Did he also bomb her house? It is an accusation. The charge on the record that day is murder. That is where the episode leaves the county. Bria is free, but leaving. Nova is safer, but still wounded. Mary is re-elected, but living in a trailer on the same land where her house used to stand. One murder charge is finally in the system. Other violence, especially the bombing, is still unresolved. The court has spoken twice. The voters have spoken too. One terror case has finally reached the docket. Even so, Bullock County is still damaged, and the people who remain there still have to wake up the next morning and keep living in it. Bria is free, and she is gone. Nova comes back with pansies and asks whether Bria is coming back. Mary is still the judge, yet she is living out of a trailer on the same land where her house stood. One branch of the terror around this case finally reaches formal arraignment. The bombing of Mary's home still sits outside any courtroom resolution by the end. That final imbalance is what makes the book feel less like a closed courtroom thriller and more like a novel of the Dobbs era. I mean that in a grounded way. After federal abortion protection fell, the fight stopped living mainly in appellate language for a lot of people. It came down into counties, clinics, emergency rooms, sheriff's departments, churches, and elected courtrooms. Judge Stone understands that level. Its pressure does not come from abstract policy talk. It comes from who can get care, who controls the record, who shapes the witness, who can keep order, and who pays a political price for doing the job. That is the outside frame worth carrying after the plot ends. The novel earns that meaning through the case itself. Bullock County has too few doctors, so one prosecution also becomes a public health shock. The ER chart becomes legal evidence because ordinary care is already fragile. Church aid keeps Nova's family fed and clothed, and that same aid enters the courtroom as possible leverage. Mary is an elected judge, so every ruling is also campaign material the second it leaves her mouth. White supremacist intimidation is active, local, and present tense. It shows up in bodies, walls, crowds, and finally at Mary's front door. When the law moves through a system like that, it carries the shape of that system with it. That is why the book's politics feel specific instead of pasted on afterward. The empty clinic, the church donations, the courthouse pressure, the land attack, the sheriff's thin control, the bombing, the re-election fight. Those are the argument. Cly Grant. The novel does not need a speech to explain what kind of country this is looking at. The county has already shown it. It also helps place the book inside legal thriller tradition. A lot of courtroom fiction still runs on an older promise. Facts come into court. Skilled lawyers sort them. The verdict gives the world a usable shape again. Judge Stone keeps the machinery of that form. It still gives you jury selection, witness turns, cross-examination, verdict, and judicial power. What it changes is the effect. Truth enters the record and the town stays damaged. The ruling matters and ordinary life does not come back into balance. That is the point of the ending. Bria is freed, and the county is not repaired. The book also pushes past the statute itself and asks what that statute becomes inside a poor, racially pressured, locally elected system. That is a harder question than simple guilt or innocence. On paper, the case can look narrow. In lived reality, the same law is moving through scarcity, fear, moral policing, racial terror, and campaign logic all at once. That is why the ending holds so much friction. Mary's ruling is decisive. It still cannot restore Brias Place in town, erase what Novacar, rise, rebuild the farmhouse, or settle the violence still hanging around the case. That feels true to this civic moment. Public arguments sound national. Enforcement feels intimate. It happens where people know each other's roads, relatives, church seats, and weaknesses. It happens where a doctor can be indispensable on Monday and radioactive by Friday. It happens where a judge's private history can be turned into pressure. It happens where legal conflict reaches into housing, safety, work, and whether anyone still trusts the institutions around them. So the ending lands with several answers sitting side by side. The jury speaks, Mary speaks after that through Rule 20.3. The mob answers through retaliation, voters answer at the ballot box. Those answers do not merge into one clean civic conclusion, they pile up. That feels close to the present American condition the novel is trying to catch. Legal authority still matters. Democratic authority still matters. Intimidation still moves right alongside them. That is why I would carry Judgestone forward as a county-scale picture of America after Dobbs. It shows how reproductive law gets enforced through local weakness as much as through legal text. It shows how a courtroom can matter enormously and still leave the people outside it living among the same damaged structures. It shows how one child can finally be heard and still go home with the burden of having been turned into evidence in public. So the last judgment it'd leave on it is a simple one. Justice here is real. It is necessary. It is also incomplete. The court can free one person and still fail to heal the world that needed that ruling.